And isn't it nice? We can stand in the light and be seen for who we are. Life is good and very good. We have been talking this month, actually this is the second week, so the theme this month is You Are Rooted in the Divine. So we're looking at how we are really rooted. We are centered, we are solid in our relationship with the divine. Now last week I spoke about your personal self. This week the talk title is Your Impersonal Self. Do you ever think of yourself as being impersonal? For most of us, I would bet no. We like to all think of ourselves as being warm, friendly, personable, right? So to talk about your impersonal self, it's like, what are we talking about here? What does this mean? But in this instance, I'm talking about the self being self with a capital S. In other words, it might be our God self. So metaphysically, when we look at self, we're talking about the center of God consciousness, of having awareness. Awareness that we are spiritual beings on a spiritual journey. Each of us has this God consciousness within us. Now, some people recognize it and know that they can use it, and other people are just oblivious to it. Those are the people that think that the world is against them. They may think that I have to go this life alone. Have you ever heard people say, if it's going to be, it's up to me? Isn't that kind of our power? We feel like we have to do it if we're using those kinds of words. So the impersonal self is our God consciousness. And God consciousness is wanting to unfold and will unfold, but it does so according to how we will think and the thoughts we have. Now, if you're here at CSL Parker, I would venture to guess that you're on a spiritual journey and that you recognize that you're on a spiritual journey. And that's a good thing, because when you recognize that, then you can consciously use the power of God to direct your thought and to create the life that you want. So that's what we're looking at today. Recognizing and remembering that we are all children of God. We're made in the likeness and image of God. But what I don't usually say is that's the spiritual likeness and image. And because we're so human sometimes, we think likeness and image of God means our physical body. But that's not who you really are. Who you really are is who you are as a spirit. You know, nobody has gotten out of this life alive. So at some point, we will all die. But our spirit lives on. We are eternal beings, and we recognize that eternality within ourselves. So if that's the part of us that lives on, then isn't that our real self, where we connect with spirit? And that's what we want to live from, is that recognition, that place where we know that we are one with the divine, and that God is living in us, through us, and as we give rise to living and expressing spirit in everything we do. In the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest says, our consciousness of God is our real self. And at the same time, it's both personal and impersonal. It's personal in that it's personified through us. And it's impersonal that we're all using a universal power. So Stacy was reading about this in her reading today. That personal and that impersonal part. It is the subjective mind and the subjective. It's God all around us too. So we make use of that through our own experience, our own expression. You see, God doesn't just express in one way, because God is so much bigger than we are. And therefore, spirit is so diverse. Look around at nature. Look at all the plants, all the animals, all the people. Don't you see a great diversity? Don't you see abundance in everything? And from that, we can know that God expresses in many, many ways. And we can allow that Spirit to express as our own unique selves. That's what we're called to be, is our own unique expression of God. Nobody else can express Spirit like you can. You are needed to make that whole, the whole of humanity. Ernest goes on and says, when we know that we're using such a power, all doubt as to our ability to use it will vanish, and our words will be spoken with spontaneous reliance on truth. So when we recognize that God is in us, and that we can align ourselves with Spirit, and we can use that Spirit to create, then we don't have to worry about it's us doing it. It's not the, if it's going to be, it's up to me. It really is, if it's going to be, it's up to God. But the me part of that is it's up to me to get out of the way, to get rid of my mental roadblocks, to allow Spirit to work through me, to allow Spirit to express as fully as it wants to. So, as we look at this, we look at how can we get out of the way of God, and how can we let that power, that one presence, move through us, live in us and through us, and experience life in a much better way. Last week, when I talked about your personal self, you may remember that I talked about how we grow roots down into the soil of the divine. When we connect with God, that's our way of growing roots through our prayer, through meditation, through affirmations, through all of our spiritual tools, spiritual readings, music. Those are all ways that we connect with God, that we grow our roots into the soil of God to gather nutrients so that we can then bloom in our humanness, bloom as human beings expressing our spiritual nature. Isn't that exciting? You get to bloom. And you get to bloom right where you are and be the best you can be. You don't have to be somebody else. Everybody else is taken. You have to be you. And how exciting is that? So in Science of Mind, you'll hear the phrase a lot that love points the way. What does that mean, love points the way? Well, that's what we talked about last week. Our personal self is where love points the way. This is where the compassion of our heart comes up. When we connect with Spirit, when we understand that God is all there is, and that we can be and are a part of this power, then the compassion of our hearts calls us into action. Don't we want to do something for people when we recognize and feel that we love them? Don't we want to reach out and help them? Don't we want to make their life better? Do you like to make people smile? Sure, you want people to feel good when they're around you, don't you? I hope so, because nobody wants to be around some old sourpuss. So yes, love points the way. What would love do? What would Jesus do? I saw a bumper sticker this week. It said, what would Jimmy Buffett do? I thought, I could have a margarita. So love points the way. The rest of that phrase is, law makes the way possible. Law is our mind in action. So we're living in this spiritual world, and that's what we're talking about this week, is the spiritual laws that are in operation. So when love points the way and law makes the way possible, it means it's two sides of the same coin. It is Spirit. It's all Spirit. Everything is God. And so God is both that personal side, which is the compassion of our hearts, our connection with other people. And it's the impersonal side, which is the spiritual laws that work for everybody the same. So we can say that everything is love and law. And we do. And some people get very confused about what that means. love and law. But it's taking those two sides of God, the love, the compassionate side, that calls us to action, to help ourselves, to forgive ourselves, to help others and forgive others. And marry that with the impersonal side, which is the law of life, the spiritual laws that work for everybody. Now here's an example. Spiritual laws work for everybody. So we talk about the law of circulation. And we like when people give money so that we as a spiritual center can do things, right? But don't we have people that are just as committed, not on the spiritual path, but they want to give money to the Parker Arts Center. They want to give money to the zoo. They want to give money to a scholarship fund, to a university. That still activates the spiritual law of circulation. So it doesn't have to be that they are thinking about a spiritual path and giving money to be on a spiritual path. They are giving money to what calls to their heart. And so giving to some other organization still activates the law of circulation. And whatever you give out, you're going to get back. So if you're stingy with what you give out, guess what? You're not going to get much back. If you give lavishly, you're going to get back lavishly. Because it's done to us as we believe. And if we give out of joy, then we know that joyfully we are going to get back. So that spiritual law of circulation works whether we know it or not, and whether we're doing it in a church or outside of the church. Does that make sense for you? Can you see that? Good. Love points the way. What are we doing from the love in our heart? And the way makes the law possible. The law makes that way possible because it will bring that about. So, the law of reflection. When we put out good vibes, what are we going to get back? Good vibes. When we put out question and doubt and fear, what are we going to get back? Question and doubt and fear. So that's one of the spiritual laws here that we're looking at, and it works the same for everyone. You don't have to be sitting here in this center or in some church, because spiritual laws work for everybody. In the Bible, it talks about the rain falls on the just and the unjust. That's a spiritual law here that is happening. Actually, it's a law of nature. Nature is God. So yeah, it's a spiritual law. And it happens for everybody. You don't have to be the good person, so to speak, in order to have the good things in life. The spiritual laws work for everyone, no matter where we are and what we're doing. The only thing that can block us on our path is ourselves. So it says in Acts 10:34 that God is no respecter of persons. There are other places in the Bible where it refers to that same idea, that God is no respecter of persons. So what that means is we're not looking at how you're justified, what you think you have to do in order to be in communion with God. You are a spiritual being. Newsflash, you're a spiritual being. And no matter what you do, you're still a child of God. Spirit is still there all around you. And when we recognize this, we can step into our own being and consciously use our thoughts to create what it is we want to see in life. Are you ready to create your life? Or are you going to let somebody else create that for you? Well, I think you'd rather create it yourself. Because you know what you can accept. It's only us, our own minds, our own thinking, that can block God and say, no, that's not going to work for me. And you hear us as we do our prayers, our affirmative prayers, our spiritual mind treatments, say, the universe will always say yes. The universe always says yes. That's all it can say. So it's done unto us at the level of our belief. So if we believe we can achieve this, yes, we can. And if we believe we can't, there's no way I'll be able to do that. The universe says yes. So we get to train our thinking to be affirmative, to be positive, to know that whatever it is that we want in life, as long as it's not bringing harm to someone else, we can have. But we have to do it ourselves. Remember, this is the Church of Perpetual Responsibility. We are responsible for ourselves. The only thing that can deny God is yourself. That's from Science of Mind, page 221. So as we open ourselves up to recognize that as we think, we are putting out into the universe, into that subjectiveness, which is God, the impersonal part of God, it will do whatever we think. So we want to train our minds. Now, we have practitioners here. Practitioners can help you in prayer. They can help us adjust our minds when in our minds we get too bogged down into the humanness of life. I just had the breakup. I just lost the job. I just got the diagnosis. You're human. You're going to feel those feelings. And you need to feel those feelings. But then you also get the choice to work through those. And that's where a practitioner can come in. They can help you refocus your mind on, yes, this is going on in the human part of my life. But what about the spiritual part? God is still there. God hasn't left me. Spirit is still available all the time for me. And I can step into that spiritual understanding. I can allow Spirit to lift me up, to give me a different view, and to change my expectation from what the world might tell me it could be at this point to what I want it to be. Because Spirit is unlimited. God has so much variety, so much for us to experience in life. Why wouldn't we want to try something new? Why don't we want to look at something? That old relationship, it wasn't working. So why do we have to be tied there? Let's try something new. Maybe I need to spend time with myself. Maybe there's another, even better partner for me. So we look at those things. We get to change our thinking, and that will change our life. So practitioners can be very helpful when we want to change our thought here and come up with something that would be even better for us. Most of us experience life through the five senses. We're human, and so that's where we tap into, our five senses. But when we know the real truth of ourselves, that universal truth, that's what unites all of us. The truth that consciousness of God is in itself within us. The infinite intelligence of life flows through us and to us. It's ours to use. And it's in this place of recognizing Spirit within us that we are rooted in the divine. That we understand through our connection with Spirit, we have unlimited possibilities available to us. If we can give up all of the experiences of the past, and if we can put aside any expectations for the future, where we fall is in the now moment. And when we live in the now, that's where Spirit is. If we worry about how things unfolded in the past and we fret over them, do we have any power? We're not going to change it, are we? If we worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, or we try to think about what might be, does that give us any more power? No. It's in the now moment. It's right here and right now that we have all the power of God available to us. Spirit lives in the now moment. And it's right now that God wants to create in us and through us. It's right now that we see unlimited possibilities, and we can dream. And I invite you to dream big. Let Spirit do a lot through your life. Don't play small. It doesn't become you. Play big. All the power of the universe is in the present moment. We are spiritual beings on a spiritual path. And this power that we're talking about here, this was the power that Jesus used. Do you know how hard it is to find a black Jesus? Because newsflash, Jesus was not white. This was the power that Jesus knew. His truth was that he and the Father are one. And when he recognized that oneness, he knew that all of the power of the universe was there for him. That's why he was able to calm the sea, to heal the sick, to raise the dead. He could speak his word, and because of his belief in that word, knowing that the power of God was behind everything he said, it happened. It manifested. You have that same power because you are a child of God. Just as Jesus was not the great exception, he was our great example. And so when we allow Spirit to be in us, through us, as us, our consciousness, unlimited possibility, we speak our word and it comes about. So we need to be awake and aware and alert to what it is we're doing in life, to what we want and how we can create. This is our truth, that we are one with God. So when we are able to marry the personal side of us, that heart compassion side, and that spiritual law that's there, willing and working for us, for everyone the same, regardless of what it is you're doing, when we marry those two sides, then we become Spirit in action. We become strong. It's like cogs of a gear, and they fit together and they work perfectly in that gear because we are one with God. And that oneness of love and law come together to unfold a beautiful life for us. We create with our thoughts. And so we want to be aware of what's going on. We want to make sure that the thoughts we use are the ones that we want to choose consciously. I want to end by reading a piece of prose for you. See if you can figure this out. A little riddle. I can make you rise or fall. I can work for you. I can work against you. I can make you a success or a failure. I control the way you feel. I can make you love. I can make you laugh. I can make you sad and dejected. I can make you sick. I can make you feel like you're shackled, heavy and bound. Or I can make you feel like a prism's hue, bright and dancing, beautiful colors. I can never be removed, only replaced. Who am I? What am I? I am your thought. Our thoughts have great power in our lives, don't they? So I invite you this week to spend some time realizing how powerful you are when you connect your heart love with the universe, that impersonal part of God that is spiritual universal laws that will create from your thoughts. Spend some time deciding what it is you want to create in your life. How do you want your life to unfold? Be strong. Know that Spirit will create through your thinking. And it's up to us not to block Spirit, but to allow it to have unlimited possibilities and to create the best life for us and everyone around us. This is the power of your truth as you're rooted in the divine. Let us pray. I know this power of God is around us, through us, living in us. It is the very breath that we breathe, the beat of our hearts. And we open our hearts and our minds to this power, to recognize the compassion of our hearts. And when we come from that place of compassion, we are able to speak our word into the law of the universe that creates life, more and more life, so unlimited, so unbound. And we are grateful that this is the truth of our life, that we create with God through our thinking, through our action, through our love. We marry love and law, and we welcome that into our lives as we allow Spirit to create a world that works for each of us, the best world we can imagine. We open ourselves to it. I'm grateful for the truth of these words. I release them into the universe. I know that they will accomplish, and I am grateful. And together we say, and so it is.